All right, so we're going to be diagramming linear perspective in some photographs today. So the things we're going to need for this, you're going to need our linear perspective photo diagram packet here. And we're going to need some colored pencils. You're going to need 5 colored pencils, 1 for each item you're going to have to do on the checklist. And you're going to need a ruler. All right, so we're going to walk through a couple of these together. And I'm going to have you try to complete the rest on your own. So you want 5 different colors, colored pencils, and a ruler. And let's start looking at this. So for each of these, we need to diagram 5 things. There's one that we only have to do for 1-point perspective. So for 2-point images, we'll do 4 things. But anyway, we want to make sure we get all of these done. So let's kind of talk about how to do that and walk through them. So we're going to start by finding orthogonal lines. Orthogonal lines are useful because they're going to allow us to see where our vanishing point is. So the orthogonal lines are all of the diagonal lines that kind of seem to be going towards a central point, okay? So for 1-point perspective, it'll usually be kind of a central point, like right in the middle or near the middle. For 2-point perspective, it'll be 2 points kind of off to the side. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. But for now, this is a 1-point perspective. So we're looking for a single vanishing point. So all of our orthogonal lines should be diagonal lines that go towards that vanishing point. So let's try to find some. Now with photographs, things won't typically work out perfectly because things aren't typically perfect in the real world. We have to make curves, we have to make breaks in lines, we have to make trains that are flexible so they can make turns, etc. So if things don't line up perfectly, that's okay. It just means that we're looking like at a real world image. So let's start with one of these edges right here. So I'm doing the edge of this kind of wall here. So if we kind of put the ruler here, we can see that it kind of lines up with a lot of those edges pretty well. So we'll make that an orthogonal line. Okay. We have a similar kind of thing happening over here. Let's look at the lights here. These lights, those edges seem to form a strong diagonal. So now we're starting to get a pretty good idea of where our vanishing point is. The vanishing point is going to be where all these orthogonals intersect. We still need one more orthogonal, so let's get that in. Let's do the edge of the seats here. You can see that's not a perfectly straight line. It doesn't fit perfectly, but it's pretty close. So we'll mark that in like this. Okay, you can see they don't all hit the exact same point, but they're pretty close. All right, so that's good enough. When we do these diagrams from photos, there's a good chance not everything is going to be perfect. There's going to be some wonky stuff that happens, but that's okay. We want to make sure we just have the basic idea of how to do this. All right, so I'm checking that off with my orange to show that those are done in orange. And now I'm going to find the vanishing point. So this is 1-point perspective. So we have a single vanishing point, and it's going to be where these orthogonal lines meet. All right, I'm going to call it right about there. This one seems a little bit off the orthogonal. I think this is probably a more likely vanishing point, so I'm going to mark that. But you can kind of mark a big spot that kind of envelops most of it. That'll work too, okay? So all vanishing points, we only have one because it's 1-point perspective, so we're all good there. Now we want to find the horizon line. We can't see the horizon in this picture because we're inside a train. There's a lot of stuff between us and the horizon, so we can't see it. So we want to try to figure out where it's going to be. How do we do that? Well, here's the trick. The horizon line's always going to go through the vanishing point. So these items are in order to make it easier for you. So if you do them in order, it's going to be easier to do the stuff, all right? So the first thing was finding the orthogonal lines. We can find those by looking for those strong diagonals. Once we have some of those marked in, we can tell where the vanishing point is. And once we know where the vanishing point is, we can tell where the horizon line is going to be. All we need to do is draw a horizontal line that goes through that vanishing point, and there's our horizon. I'm going to check that off with my red because that's the one I used. I'm going to put it off to the side here. So next we're going to use a green, and we're going to try to find 3 horizontal lines. So again, not everything's going to be perfectly horizontal. Sometimes you get a little bit of lens skew. Sometimes things just aren't horizontal in the real world. But we're going to count this bench seat seam as horizontal because it's pretty close, all right? Let's see, what else do we have? We don't have a ton of options on here, honestly. There's kind of a seam right here in the vent up here. That makes a horizontal line. We've got a break in the roof of the cab right here. It also makes a horizontal line. So those would all work. We don't want like this line here, for example. You can see that's an orthogonal because it looks like it's going diagonal. We only want lines that look like they are going horizontally. So we can find another one here on the bottom of the seat. That works. On this side, that also works. Not a ton of options to pick from, but we got our 3. So if you have one where there's not a ton of options to choose from, try to find at least 3 and then move on. Some of them are going to have more than others. So let's check that off. Boop, 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 boop. 3 horizontal lines. And now I need to get 3 vertical lines. Vertical lines in this one are a little easier to find. So we're going to have 1 vertical line for this kind of grabbing pole here. We could also do anything on the walls here. You can see this is a little bit off vertical. And that could be 2 different things. That could be a little bit of curvature from the lens. Sometimes depending on the wideness or narrowness of a lens, you'll get a little curvature to it. It'll have a fisheye effect. It could also just be that the train's built with the walls coming in at a little bit of an angle. It's hard to say, but we'll count those as vertical lines, all right? So you might notice that some of your vertical lines are kind of coming down, almost as if they're going to a vanishing point up above. That's what they are doing, in fact, but it's not on the drawing, so we're not going to worry about it. That would be getting into 3-point perspective. So we could also find verticals on the backs of the seats here. Any of these would work. Any of these handrails. You could do the edges of the windows. Any of that. That's all great for vertical lines. All right, so pretty easy, pretty simple. Should be pretty quick once we get used to it. Let's move on to the next one here. All right, so next question, is this 1-point or 2-point perspective? So let's try to find some orthogonal lines to help figure that out. So you can see a strong diagonal coming this way. You can see another one here. Let's start marking some of those in. So we're going to use our orange again. We need 3 orthogonals. So good places to look for orthogonals are edges of buildings, right? We want the edge of the building that looks like it's going at a diagonal, not the horizontal edge. But also like anywhere where there's a bottom of a building and there's like a sidewalk or street, that'll usually work well. Sometimes that can be tricky because sometimes the ground goes up and down hill, so you won't have a nice straight line anymore. But if it's flat ground, you'll have a nice straight line. Let me do another one right here, along this way. We can see they all kind of converge at the same spot. We're going to mark that as our vanishing point. So I was kind of color coding what I did. I did orange for orthogonals because they both start with O. Then I did violet for vanishing points. But then I couldn't think of colors that start with H. So I went with red. So next we need to do the horizon line. So again, for the horizon line, we want to draw a horizontal line. So we want to kind of look at it. We want to look at our ruler. We want to look at the top edge of the paper and try to make them parallel. And then we can draw on that horizon. The other key point is the horizon's going to go through that vanishing point. So it just has to be a horizontal line that goes through the vanishing point, and you're all good. Let's check that off. All right. Next, we need to find 3 horizontal lines. So good places for horizontal lines. Any building that's facing towards us, has like a flat side like this, that's going to have horizontal lines on the top and the bottom. like here and here. Those will be horizontal lines. If you have like crosswalks or streets that go across, that's going to be a horizontal line as well, like that. Be another one up here on this side. So that's another thing to think about, is sides that are facing towards you. Sides that are facing flat towards you, so that the flat side is directly facing your face, they're not going to be in perspective. Sides that are facing to the side, to your right or your right or left, are going to be in perspective. Like these sides here, they're facing left, and this one's facing right. That's in perspective. So anyone that aren't in perspective are going to have horizontal edges for the top and the bottom. You could also do the windows on these sides, this side and this side. Those would all be good horizontal lines. All right, so we've got enough of those horizontal lines. Here's another one here, this crosswalk. Now that's a little off horizontal, but it just looks like the street level's a little higher in the middle than on the sides, so it's a little off horizontal. But for our purposes, it's a horizontal line. So yeah, we got 3 of those. Got a couple extra. Now we'll do some vertical lines. The vertical lines are going to be like places like this, like corners of buildings. Boom. You could do any of these kind of building edges all the way down the street. That would work. You could do one here on this side. That would work. The edges of the windows should be vertical edges. That works. Street sign or street posts, lamp posts. This should be a vertical line. All of those are different vertical lines. Okay. So those should be pretty easy to find as well. All right, so now we're moving into 2-point perspective. So 1-point perspective, we got one vanishing point right in the middle. For 2-point perspective, we're going to have 2 vanishing points. You can see these diagonal lines point towards something over here and something over here. One of the tricky things about 2-point perspective is sometimes the vanishing points are going to be off the page. I've tried to size the photographs so that the vanishing points will still be on the paper for you, so you should be good to go. So let's see if I did a good job and try to diagram this picture here. So one thing real quick, since this is 2-point perspective, you can see there's a thing that says 3 horizontal lines, 1-point perspective only. We're not going to have those horizontal lines anymore. So all of our horizontal lines are now being influenced by a vanishing point. So the ones that are going this way are being influenced by a vanishing point over here. The ones that are going this way are being influenced by a vanishing point over here. So we still have those vertical lines. Those are connected to the 3rd vanishing point. We're not worrying about that vanishing point right now because we're looking more or less straight at this building. All right. So again, to review that idea, when we're looking at the flat side of a building, that's going to be 1-point perspective. That's kind of what we got going on here. Kind of same idea. You can see here's the flat side, here's the flat side, here's the away side, the turned side, the side that's going to the side, and that's in perspective. Not in perspective, not in perspective, in perspective, in perspective. Same thing if we move it to the other side here, same idea. We got this flat side facing towards us, same as this, not in perspective. And then this side that's facing to our left is in perspective. It looks taller here than it does here. It's a visual illusion. Same thing is happening with the wall here. Now, 2-point perspective is when we start looking at the box like this. So we've got an edge closest to us. So when that happens, these lines that used to be horizontal, when we turn it, they stop being horizontal. They become orthogonal lines. And the closer this is, the more that's going to be emphasized. So that's why we don't do the horizontal lines with 2-point perspective. So I'm just going to cross that out for now. So let's run through this. We've got to start with some orthogonals. So we're supposed to do 3 orthogonals for each vanishing point. So I'm going to start with this orthogonal where the building meets the sidewalk there, and this top edge of the building. So we have to do extra orthogonals, so we're not even really getting any out of any work, but we don't have to do those horizontals. So any of these ridges here, between the floors would also be good orthogonals to use. And you might notice that some of your orthogonals seem pretty horizontal, like this one here. This is pretty horizontal. The closer they are to the horizon line, the closer they're going to be to horizontal. All right, so let's do the same kind of thing down here. So top of the building, bottom of the building. We've got vanishing point where they cross, another vanishing point where they cross. We could also do an orthogonal line based on this power line here. Should end up in about the same place. The power line droops down a little bit, so it doesn't quite work. But if it was tight, it would probably be going at about this angle and giving us another orthogonal line. Okay, so there's our 3 orthogonal lines. Next, we need to do all vanishing points. We're going to block those in violet. So there's one right here where we have all of these orthogonals converging, and there's one right here. This vanishing point is almost off the page. It's right on the edge. Now I have to throw in the horizon line. I'm going to go back to my red for that. So as you can see, the horizon line is going to be real close to those bottom orthogonals. See how close they are? That's why it almost looks like this orthogonal line is horizontal. It's not quite. It goes down at a very slight angle. And then we need to add 3 vertical lines. Three verticals. We can do any sort of vertical edge of the building here. That would totally work. We do one here. We do one on the back edge. So those, if we were drawing these buildings, these are the vertical lines we'd concentrate on probably, like the back edge on the left, back edge on the right, and the front edge here. Maybe more right here. Other things that are vertical lines are going to be things like poles. If you have a light pole or a power pole, that's going to be a vertical line. You can see like that. You could make vertical lines at the edges of the windows. Anything like that is going to totally work for that vertical line. All right. Let's do one more 2-point perspective, and then you should be good, I think, to go. This one's a bit of a challenge because it is a room interior. So let's talk about how to do that. Room interior is same sort of idea. Everything's just kind of reversed, but we can figure it out as we go, I think. I think we should be all right. So we don't have to do those horizontal lines, so I'm going to cross those out again. But let's go through. We need 3 orthogonals for each vanishing point. So let's figure out where the vanishing points are going to be. This looks like a strong orthogonal to me. I feel like it's pointing off this direction, and it seems like there's a lot of diagonals going that way. So then I'm going to do the edge of the bed here as an orthogonal. I'm going to do the top edge of the bed here as well. I can't really see it totally behind the pillow, so I want to estimate where that's going to be. And then I can do like any of these edges here. I'm going to do the edge of this window bank here. Let's try that. I'll do an extra. You could also do the bottom edge of this window bank. All of that seems to be going to pretty much the same vanishing point, so I think we're good on that. Same idea going over to this side. So we have one vanishing point here. We know there's a vanishing point somewhere around here. So let's look for diagonal lines that are pointing in that direction. I think this one is, this one is, this one is. That gives us some good options. We'll start with the bottom edge of the bed there. This carpet looks like it's straight and lined up, so we'll get that in there. The top of this window bank looks pretty good. We'll get that in there. Oh no! I may have actually put this vanishing point off the page. Oh, it's a little off the page. It's a little off the page. Oh, that's all right. So we'll kind of put an arrow and write VP. Hopefully the rest of those work. I may fix this before I print out versions for you. So yours maybe mysteriously fits on there. I don't know. We'll see. It's a surprise. There's mine. Not great. That's okay though. So we got our 3 orthogonals. We got our 2 vanishing points. All right, so next we're going to add in that horizon line. So for that horizon line, when we're doing 2-point perspective, we can connect the 2 vanishing points. I can't see where this one is exactly, so I kind of have to estimate. But that should be good. So there's our horizon line. And now we just need 3 vertical lines. So we'll do one here, that kind of window frame. We can do one on the other side of the window frame. That would be good. We can do the vertical edge of the bed here. Those would be good vertical lines. Any of these windows here, all of that works pretty well. So you can take your pick of 3 of those, draw them in, and check it off. And then you're good. All right. So there's a bunch more of these, but we've gone through 2 1-point and 2 2-point. That should be enough to get the idea across. If you continue to struggle or have any difficulties, please come talk to me. Let me know. I will help you out. But hopefully for most of you, this should be enough for you to understand how to break down the rest of these. All right.